pirate's life for me? Hold on, if you think being a pirate or a sailor in the old days was all fun and games, think again. It wasn't all about singing sea shanties and embarking on epic voyages across the 7 seas in search of the fountain of youth or caves filled with gold. Being at sea wasn't actually that cool, and I have 5 compelling reasons to prove it. Let's dive in. Imagine this, you're excited, waiting for the day you finally become a real sailor. The captain tells you to get ready because the next day, you'll set sail on a journey expected to take around 6 months, if you're lucky. Storms and singing mermaids could complicate things. You pack a few things? But hold on, let's pause this daydream for a second because here comes problem number 1. Packing. If you think it's just a backpack, you're wrong. Sailors would only have one set of clothes that they almost never washed during the entire voyage. They believed that dirt and grease would protect them from winds and rain. Now, back to our thought experiment. You kiss your family goodbye and head to the port where your new home awaits. A crew member, not so warmly, welcomes you on deck and shows you where you'll be sleeping. This makes you start doubting your choice of becoming a sailor. After seeing it, you're certain this won't be a 5-star hotel comfort level experience. So here's problem number 2. The ships were absolutely crammed back in the day. Sailors had to accept living in such conditions, whether they worked for a big name like Christopher Columbus or not. The Nina and the Pinta, 2 of Columbus's ships, were among the best sailing vessels of their time. Yet, they were so small that men had no place to sleep, which leads us to problem number 3. Having to sleep next to each other on a crowded deck where they could barely move wasn't great for sailors' health. And going below deck to escape the snoring of their fellow shipmates wasn't an option. There was no fresh air down there, and you could always encounter a rat. So kiss personal hygiene goodbye. In case you're wondering how rats got there, those little rascals are actually good swimmers. Sailors were at sea no matter the season or weather. They were often cold and wet, making it hard to stay healthy and strong. Speaking of health conditions, that brings us to problem number 4. Food and hunger. Sailors didn't have their own mini-fridges with different kinds of condiments back then, like the compartments luxury cruises have today. They had to come up with ways to store enough food that would last for months or even years. Their food options were limited, definitely not like the meals prepared by Michelin star chefs. One of the most common food options on ships was salted meat, which wasn't as chewy as you might imagine, or a biscuit called hardtack, also called sheet iron or worm castles. There's a reason for all these creative nicknames. Hardtack was essentially a mix of water and flour baked into a cardboard-flavored cracker. They were brick-like, and the only way they could be eaten was if they were softened with water. If only sailors could dip them in their afternoon tea. Sometimes these biscuits were still extremely dense, and sailors would have to slam their fists down on them to break them into smaller pieces to be able to eat the stuff. As long as hardtack was kept dry, it rarely spoiled. Sailors could eat it after a year if they had any left, but most of the time, it was extremely hard to keep them dry inside wooden casks. They would get infested with bugs that would leave small holes behind, but sailors would still eat them. You have to get protein from somewhere. By now, you might have figured out that there were no fruits or vegetables in a sailor's diet. This caused vitamin deficiency in many sailors. Those toothless pirates and sailors in the movies? Yeah, that's all because of poor nutrition. And the iron-hard crackers probably didn't help either. But when sailors ran out of food, not having a balanced diet was probably the least of their concerns. Back in the old days, a voyage could take way longer than expected due to weather conditions. There could be no winds to push the ship further, or a powerful storm could shake the ship and the waves and water could destroy the food storage. When this happened, sailors could easily run out of food. Well, they could throw the net into the ocean and catch some fish, right? But sailors didn't eat fish, even in the face of starvation. Many captains mentioned this in their logbooks, which were basically captains' diaries. The problem wasn't that sailors couldn't get fish. In fact, many different kinds of fish were caught in their nets, but they had to throw them all back into the sea. During the exploration era, Antonio Pigafetta mentioned in his logbook that the ship's crew caught an unbelievable amount of fish, but they didn't eat any of them. Also, in the same journal, he mentioned that 40 of the sailors lost their lives. Sailors thought that only poisonous fish were dangerous. They were inclined to eat only the fish they knew, but even a well-cooked tuna could be poisonous. They had to learn it the hard way. It's not like they didn't have any methods to check fish. Spanish sailors, for example, put silver coins on the fish. If the silver changed color, they considered those fish to be poisonous and therefore inedible. So they would toss them overboard. Other sailors would place the fish they caught on the deck and observe if flies or other insects came to feast on it. If they didn't land on the fish, this meant it was poisonous. But if insects did come, they considered it safe to eat. The problem of eating fish caught in the open sea dates back to as early as the 7th century BCE. Imperial healers in ancient China knew that eating fish was the reason why some sailors lost their lives. But they couldn't prove that the fish were poisonous. The mystery remained unsolved until the 19th century. In 1886, a Cuban doctor finally figured out that some fish contained poison in their tissues and muscles. Even though they were considered a safe-to-eat breed, that kind of poison is actually found in plankton. Some fish can eat this plankton without being affected. They store it in their bodies, and as they grow, the rate of poison increases within them. This is something that doesn't go away no matter how long one cooks the fish. Still think life at sea back in the old days sounds exciting? This fifth problem will convince you otherwise. Let's say you've managed to get along with your roommates, stay clean and healthy, and eat regularly. But there's always a risk of getting caught by pirates, and they didn't ask for things kindly. So if you didn't want to end up as food for sharks, you would have to raise the white flag and simply join them. Not the career you're planning, right? Scrubbing the deck for the rest of your life. That's it for today. So hey, if you've pacified your curiosity, give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.